52-51. But then they go against Penn State and score 3 points. And that was a perfect spot to fade this team, right? But, when they played Michigan State, they only scored 3 points. They were there was one of those teams that was just like bipolar. They beat Texas, the first game of the season, and then every single game of theirs, it was never close. They were either blowing teams out or they were getting blown out, which I thought was very, very interesting last year when picking them against the spread a couple games. So Maryland's new skill positions really everywhere. They get Josh Jackson as a transfer from Virginia Tech. That's kind of interesting. He was supposed to be better than he turned out there.
Right.
And they get a pretty good tight end in Taylor Mabry from Buffalo, a grad transfer. But they lose Turner under the I think Turner's actually back this year for wide receiver, but they lose a couple other guys for the skill positions. I think Anthony McFarland's the one that's going to return, and he did play most of the snaps last year at running back. My number is 3.5 because of that tough East division. I think their season win total is about a 4 or 4.5. I'm not playing this one. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, but I think that Mike Locksley was a confusing hire. You look at a lot of head coaches and the turnover. I think there were some really good hires. I don't know why they wanted Mike Locksley here based on his past as a head coach. I know that he was at Bama as an assistant there last year, and I think that's probably what got him the job here. Having said that, I think he just has a lot to prove. Maybe he'll prove it here. I wouldn't want to bet on it. I think that the other thing about Maryland is, they lost quite a bit from last year. They're just returning 10 starters, and their schedule is really difficult. It's a very difficult schedule. You go down through here and you look at what's going to be an easy win. They play Howard in the first game. There's one win. At Rutgers, will that be an easy win for them? I don't know. You'd think they could beat Rutgers, but at the same time, I don't know if that will be that easy. Home against Indiana, they'd at least have a chance. I think it's hard to find 4 wins on this schedule. I really do. And as I looked at this right before we recorded here, plus 115 on under 4 at BetOnline. I like plus 115 on that. To me, it'd be stunning if Maryland wins 5 games. So, if we push, then that's the worst that happened. That's fine. I think that Maryland is likely to win 3 or 4 games. And if you give me plus money on 4, I'll take the under.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaq Smith's another interesting defensive player that's supposed to be pretty good. Another transfer in. I guess the good thing you say about him is that they were a net 0.56 yards per play. They were at 6.12 last year and gave up 5.6, but 5.56. But like you said, they replaced a ton of those guys, and there's just too many questions for me to make a play myself. So lean to the under for me. Moving on to Illinois, so what was Lovie Smith, his record there? I think it's like 7 and 26 or something. And what does Illinois do? Well, they extend his contract for 3 years. I guess that thing about the Bears going to the Super Bowl back in 2005 must still be sticking in the land of Lincoln there. I don't know what the heck's going on. I do know that Illinois had a decent offense, and I think some of those numbers might be inflated just because of that Minnesota game that they finally got their heads out of their ass. They return a ton of production, 70% on offense, 81% on defense. They were the youngest team in the Big Ten. I'll say that. Okay. I had them finished at minus 7.5 in the power ratings. I have them at -4 right now. But why was Lovie allowing a defense giving up 7 yards per play? That seems way too much for a guy that's supposed to be defensive minded here. Let's see what quarterback Matt Robinson does. I think this could be a sneaky team if this young team develops. It's hard to predict that. I don't know if they develop. They didn't show a ton of signs of it. I think at the end of the year was more promising, though. I have them at 4.5 wins. Their season win total is 4. They did score 16 against Northwestern at the end of the year. They lost that game by only 8 points. I don't know. I'm staying away from it. Any thoughts?
I think if you look at their numbers offensively, they're pretty impressive. Like you said, they're at least somewhat skewed by their ridiculous game there against Minnesota. But 6.27 yards per carry in Big Ten play. I mean, that's pretty amazing for a team that's been as bad as them. Illinois has more talent than these other really weak teams in the Big Ten. So they would certainly at least have a chance of improving. I will say, if anybody's saying, well, they have 10 returning starters on defense, so I don't think that's a good thing. I mean, they weren't any good on defense. So what would make you think they're going to be good on defense this year? I don't see anything that would. I do think overs could have value with them from a totals perspective. I think that Isaiah Williams is probably going to end up getting the quarterback job, at least for most of the season. Really highly touted freshman. Lovie Smith has made several quotes about him, having really great potential to do a lot of things. This is an Illinois team that is at least capable of pulling a big upset. I don't want to count on them to win 5 games. So season win total, I'm just going to pass here.
No, completely agree with you there. We'll see what, if anything, develops with Illinois. Going to be interesting to watch this team. There's something about Lovey that they like there. So definitely no future plays, obviously. Moving on to Rutgers, last and definitely least, Chris Ash over there, my man. I don't know. The guy just cannot get over the hump here. They play teams like Washington and keep it close, and then just completely screw your bets over later in the year. It seems. Art Sitkowski, I have at starting quarterback again. Bull Melton, best wide receiver. Raheem Blackshear at their running back, but recruiting wise, there's nothing telling me that they're going to be any good. They only returned 44% of their defense. Not that that's bad, because they won one game last year, gave up 5.7 yards per play, and was only at 4.14 yards per play. That's a negative 1.56 yards per play, the worst in the Big Ten. I have them power rated at a -7. Last year I finished them at a -11. I guess I'm a little optimistic on that part of it. But as far as the season win total at 2.5, my number is only 2, being in that brutal Big Ten East. Any thoughts on Rutgers real quick?
Yeah, I don't like betting season win totals that are this kind of number. I mean, I think if I had to take it, I'd take the under with the plus money price on under 2.5. But, things can go their way to where they win 3 games pretty easily. This is an easy pass for me as far as a win total. I will say, when you're looking at this team, you look at how bad the offense was last year. The offense put the defense in some really bad spots. You feel like the defense at least has some potential to keep them in the game some of the time. But Arthur Sitkowski, 4 touchdowns and 18 interceptions. I mean, I looked at that one, and honestly, I had to do a double take and look that one up somewhere else to think maybe that was wrong. That you just don't see that type of thing. He was a freshman, and certainly don't think it's all his fault. They've got plenty of problems around, and the offensive line is a mess. I don't see Rutgers getting better anytime soon. I think this is just an easy one to stay away from.
All right, my man. Definitely agree with you there. I mean, the problem about betting low and high totals is that there's no margin for error. You can't get over 12 wins. Right. You can't get under 0 wins. So there's usually less of a variance or a standard deviation there between the correct number and what it ends up. So just kind of remember that. You're going to get more value in the middle of your season win totals. All right, my man. Moving on to the Big 12. Kyle, this division 2 years in a row, Oklahoma making the college football playoffs this year. A lot of changes have happened, my man. I'm going to let you take the lead on this, going from your probably your highest power ranked team to your lowest. Where you want to start?
Yeah, let's start with Oklahoma. I mean, you got to start with them. I like the hire of Alex Grinch. I was bummed to see him leave Ohio State. I think he's a really good mind. He did a great job at Washington State. He should make this defense better. Now, how long is it going to take? That's kind of my question. Is it going to happen overnight? I mean, this team gave up 74 plays of 20 yards or more last year. That's 113th in the country. Definitely need to cut down on the big plays. I think the run defense will be better. Some really good recruits there in the middle of the defensive line. Murray, a good middle linebacker. Pass defense, still the question. And for me, the issue with that is, there's a lot of good teams in the Big 12 that can throw the football. So, I mean, Oklahoma's going to have to score a lot of points again. Kyler Murray's gone. Everybody knows that. The offensive line lost a lot of top-notch guys. I think the inexperience on the line is my biggest question mark for this Oklahoma team in general. Everybody knows that their defense isn't great. Jalen Hurts, will he be a good fit? I mean, I think Lincoln Riley's offense adapts really well to people. So I think him to be I think Hurts will be a good fit, but not as good as Mayfield or Murray. I think those are really high bars. Good running backs in Sermon and Brooks. So I think that they might run the football a little bit more than they have in the past. And I'm curious to see what their tempo will be. Again, this is one of these where you have a really high win total. I'm not interested in taking over 10.5. I think, they'll probably get 10 or 11 wins, and I don't want to guess on which one it'll be.
Oklahoma, I faded them last year. Well, I didn't bet on them to win the Big 12. I probably bet on something stupid like Texas, but I'm probably going to do that again and just be wrong again. I got to tell you, I am not a Jalen Hurts guy. If Lincoln Riley makes this guy look like a Heisman contender, then I say just pay Lincoln Riley as much money as you possibly have and then get some more. Alex Grinch from Ohio State, the Grinch that stole Ohio State's defense. There's my dad joke, by the way. So it is an amazing hire. I 100% agree with you. And if he turns out good and Jalen Hurts turns out good, you're seeing another playoff team here. I can't, this is one that might be able to almost compete with the Clemsons and the Alabamas here. I don't think Jalen Hurts is, though, Kyler Murray. I don't. And I do agree they replace a ton of offensive production. If anything, I lean to the under here, my man. But I'm not going to. I'm not going to take anything and then the future's there. I might have another future play later for you. So passing on this one.
All right. I'm going to take you this in order of kind of expectations, what the season win totals are set at. Texas next here, Texas Longhorns, 10-4 last year. How do you go 10-4 and be minus 0.09 yards per play margin? That's 81st in the country. That's very hard to do. +9 turnover margin certainly helps that a lot. Texas was very fortunate to have the record they had last year. The problem here is everybody's taking the under on the season win total. It was 9.5, minus 110 a few weeks ago. The summer kind of gets to where you spend time with the family. I wish I had gotten this one sooner. If I'd have been on my college football prep back in June, I would have bet under 9.5 on Texas. I think that's too high. I really do. I think Texas. Ellinger's really good. Everybody knows he's good. He's going to miss Humphrey. They had McCoy transfer out from the wide receiver group too. The offensive line's not very good. I mean, a bunch of depth at running back. Is there anybody that's really that good? I think this offense may be overvalued by some who just say, well, Ellinger's really going to be really good. I mean, the talent around him is not as good as what you would think at Texas. To me, you look at the defense, a ton of new faces. I think there's a lot of talent, but a lot of inexperience. They're weaker on the defensive line. The top 3 tacklers are gone. A lot of highly recruited players step in, but it's hard to imagine they can keep the same level and not fall back at all. I think the run defense is weaker. The safeties are the strength of this defense. Texas was really bad on third down percentage defense last year, 109th in the country. You would think that would improve. I think this is a good defense, but not elite. I think Texas is a good fade as far as when they're a big favorite in game. If you've got a single game where Texas is favored by a big margin, I'm not sure they're going to put up the huge numbers on offense that they need to cover those really big numbers. So I lean toward the season win total under here, and I would look to go against Texas ATS.
Sam Ehlinger eats nails is what everyone said last year. I thought that was kind of funny. So, Texas, them and Nebraska are the biggest fades from the sharper players that I've heard of. All the people I talk to on Twitter, of all the podcasts I've listened to, all the collaboration I've had with pick sellers, people such as yourself. Texas is the number one, I think. Nebraska's right up there too. And I don't know I got to tell you, I'm not quite feeling what you are on that. Now, I'm not saying, definitely not betting the over, and Texas has a very tough schedule here, but you can't, first of all, you can't go by that bowl game. Georgia had everything just ripped out of them, that losing that game against Alabama the way they did. You can't count that, in my opinion, to what they did last year. Was it something very small? Don't factor that bowl game in that much. What I do think about Texas, if I'm going to play any devil's advocate to you, Kyle, is that in 2016 they had the number 7 ranked recruiting class. I thought that was decent. Now Texas, got a lot of them. Tom Herman's entering his third year, which is when I usually like to be on a coach. That's another devil's advocate type